Hi, I'm Dr. Melissa Blake. I'm a naturopathic doctor, and this is kind of part two of a video series that I'm doing on immune health. So, in the first video, we highlighted three features of the immune system that are important to consider when you're trying to address immune health. The first is that it's a completely fluid system. It exists everywhere throughout the body. It has a variety of different tissues and cells that are part of a healthy immune response. And it can't really be separated from any other tissue or system. So when you're doing something that you think is health supportive, whether it's, sleeping a little extra or getting a little more movement or eating a certain way, all of those things are also supporting your immune function. The second thing is that inflammation is a necessary component of a healthy immune response. We want to find balance there for sure. We don't want it to become chronic, but we should expect a little bit of inflammation anytime our immune system is activated. And the third thing is that there are barriers, physical barriers that include the skin, the mucous membranes that line our upper respiratory tract, as well as our digestive system, and all the secretions that they make that are part of our immune system. They're part specifically of our innate immune system. So, what happens when something kind of gets through those barriers and gets into our tissue? Well, we have specialized white blood cells. It's mostly macrophages and neutrophils that come to the area and help to digest. So, they actually engulf cells that they see as potentially harmful or abnormal, and they digest them within their own cell membrane. This happens because of inflammation. So the first step in this process is that the cells in the near vicinity, local to wherever that infection or invader has first kind of entered, they're damaged, right? They're damaged by the toxins that these cells can secrete, like a virus or a bacteria, or the fact that a virus or a bacteria has actually gotten into a cell. That creates damage to the cell, and they basically send out alert signals, right? And they do that in the form of cytokines. Cytokines are inflammatory molecules. So they're just creating a path of inflammation as a signal to all other immune cells to come to the area. I need some help. They're recruiting their friends to the area to help them out. And the reason why this is so cool, the reason why inflammation is important, is because local inflammation causes the blood vessels in the area to dilate. And to dilate means they're getting bigger. That means that more blood flow can come to that specific area. And along with it, more nutrients, more oxygen, and most importantly, more immune cells. The other thing that the inflammation does is it causes the blood vessel, the lining of the blood vessels, the cells, to kind of separate a little bit. So they become leaky. That means that things that normally couldn't get out of the bloodstream are able to. Most importantly, immune cells. So immune cells can move from the bloodstream into that area of infection. And this is a process called diapedesis, which is a super fun word to say. So I encourage everyone to try it. So through a process of diapedesis, immune cells leave the bloodstream and enter the tissue where the infection is, just basically following those inflammatory signals. Really cool. So all of this, from the skin, mucous membranes, all of our secretions, to that cellular response, all of that is part of our innate immune system. That means it's non-specific. It's not targeting anything in particular. It's just targeting anything that could potentially be infectious or damaging. And it happens really quickly. It's a fast response, but because it's so fast, it's also dirty, right? It's a quick and dirty response. So there's inflammation that's part of this, and all of it needs to be kept in balance. If those cells can contain that infection, then they just start to basically clean up. They're part of the cleanup crew too. If they can't, if the infection is just a little bit beyond what the innate system can control on its own, the next thing that happens is super cool. So those cells that have just digested the virus or the bacteria can actually present pieces of those cells on their own cell surface. They then get into the lymphatic system, right, which is a very important part of our immune system. It's where it's the channel that all of our kind of lymph cells, our white blood cells, immune cells kind of travel, and they get filtered through the tissue in the lymph nodes. So these cells that have just engulfed a virus or a bacteria present it, pieces of it on their cell membrane, get into the lymphatic system and find a lymph node and present it to specialized white blood cells known as B cells and T cells. They basically present these pieces and say, do you recognize this? If you do, great. Let's get, all of the cells that have seen this before ready and start producing antibodies. If you haven't, this is what's coming. You better get ready and start producing antibodies. It's amazing. It's amazing communication. And there's lots of different factors and lots of different chemical reactions and, things that can go wrong, but a lot of times things go really right in this very intricate system. Quite remarkable. So from there, the B cells and the T cells are involved in antibody production. So this is your adaptive immune system. So that means that it's very specific. So these antibodies are produced based on that piece of the virus or bacteria that they saw, not on anything else. It's not random. It's very targeted. It also takes a little longer to happen. So if you've never seen this virus or bacteria before, you're more likely to have a period of illness before you actually start developing antibodies. If you have seen it before, you might have mild or even unnoticeable symptoms or no symptoms at all, because the response happens a little faster if you've been exposed, if you have pre-exposure. So that adaptive piece is around creating antibodies. It takes a little longer, but it helps create a memory or ideally immunity to whatever you've already been exposed to. Pretty awesome system, right? Next video, we're going to talk a little bit about some power habits that we can use to support the innate and the adaptive immune systems. Thanks for listening.